Uh, so yeah, well, kind of the idea for today is to talk about doing less software. I think as an industry, we kind of tend to do a lot of software and became very good with that very good at that at last kind of 10, 15 years. And I think we're now in a position where we can significantly change the way we're approaching this to get a lot more value out of our time, a lot more value out of our investment in software. And I'm here to give you a challenge kind of for the next year to try and do the least amount of software possible, but to achieve the same results. And I think with everything we've done over the last 10 or 15 years, especially in the Agile community, we're now in a position to create something like this for our software. So when kind of GPS devices came along and sat-nav devices came along, people could start driving much more reliably, much better, much easier, because before we had this, kind of we had to plan the whole journey up front. We had to plot where we wanted to go and then monitor closely if we're doing the right roads or not. And if we, by any chance, got stuck on a motorway or got into the wrong road or anything like that, we had to kind of go off the road and stop and replan, and that took a lot of time and it wasn't very kind of pleasant. With GPS devices, if we go off the road or if one road is blocked, it just recalculates the journey for us. And I think with all the advances we've done in terms of developing and testing software and specifying software and things like that, we're in a position to start creating something like this. But for a large majority of people, we don't seem to be doing that well in terms of flexible planning. Agile software was kind of going to bring the promise of adapting and being agile and being flexible. But Forrester Research did this survey last year on how companies actually adopt Agile. And based on a relatively large sample, they concluded that most companies have this long business decision-making process up front. And then they let teams do their software in iterations and whatever. And then there's, again, a long business decision-making process at the end. And they call this thing water, scrum, fall, which is kind of quite an interesting metaphor, and I think I've seen too many of these things where all the mistakes have been made by the time people actually start building software. And software can't really fix those decisions that somebody has made up front. And the problem with water, scrum, fall is that we are not really benefiting from learning through delivery. A lot of literature out there, a lot of kind of what's going on in the community is talking about how we can only discover what we want to deliver as we're delivering it, because the market changes too quickly. The situation outside of our control changes too quickly. Technology moves on, other competitors are there, and we can only really decide what we want to deliver by delivering something and learn from that. Dan North talks about deliberate discovery as an idea where if you went back, think about your last project, and if you went back and did it all over again, same scope, everything the same, how faster would you do it? And Dan's idea is that kind of it would be at least kind of twice as fast or even more, because we've learned so much through delivery. And if we already know that while delivering things are going to change, we're going to learn and things like, there's absolutely no point not planning for that and thinking that everything is going to be perfect, that we're never going to get into a roadblock or move into a kind of move off the road and not have to replan and not have to rethink what we're doing. Instead of that, Dan advises actually planning for that up front and optimizing delivery for learning. There's a lot of other literature suggesting similar things, but I think kind of if we were able to create something like this for our software projects, if we were able to create something like this for our software products that would automatically recalculate the plan for us without having to stop, without having to replan all the time, we'd be in a much, much better position. And that's kind of the challenge I want to give you, to think about how would you create something like this for you? And the problem for kind of largely is with the way we plan. And I think the problem lies largely in kind of this thing that became almost the standard for planning today. This is the Connextra template for user stories, where I don't know, how many people in the room use something like this to plan? This is the Agile conference, yeah? Okay, so what do the other people do? MMFs. MMFs, okay. Not having plans at all, okay. Okay, so this kills the joke then. In lots of cases, kind of people plan through something like this, where kind of MMFs are also described as work items and things like that. And kind of the problem with that is there's not much we can do to measure whether we've actually achieved it or not, apart from actually collect lots of technical tests and bugs and things like that and put it in something like this, because this thing doesn't give us really a criteria for success. When we do MMFs, when we do use cases, it doesn't really give us a criteria of when that was really successful or not. So we have to invent our own success. We invent some kind of testing where we list bugs. We invent code coverage where we go to 76.71% coverage on this thing, and that's how we measure success. And because that's kind of too much info, we put that in nice dashboards like this that tell us that we're on track or not on track. And over the last 10 or 15 years, I think as a community, we have invested an insane amount of time and money in building tools like this, in using tools like this, in measuring something that has 10,078 violations, 8,000 of them major, and has kind of technical that's very precisely defined, but it still goes to production because somebody decided that it's Friday and this has to go live. So kind of the problem with those things is we're not really able to express whether we've succeeded or failed with this, and that's why those things are not as useful for planning as they would be on a GPS that automatically tells us are we going further or closer to the destination, because there is no destination. As we kind of plan like this, the only way people measure whether they've succeeded or not in globally is kind of tracking story points and things like that. And this is from Rapid Scrum, where kind of an example how you can achieve hyper productivity by doing kind of these burn ups and burn downs and measuring story points. The problem with all those metrics, bugs, code coverage, technical data and everything, even story points, is that they're all negative metrics. Negative metrics tell us that something is wrong. They do not tell us that something is right. If a system has lots of bugs, it's a safe bet to say that something is wrong. If a system has 0 bugs, that doesn't mean anything. Maybe we've not tested it. Maybe the testers are a bit rubbish and couldn't find anything. Maybe the developers didn't really put any automation hooks in it, so it's difficult to test. It doesn't tell us that we have succeeded. I like to use an analogy of blood pressure. Blood pressure is similarly a negative indicator of human health. A very high blood pressure tells you that something is wrong. If I had a very high blood pressure, that probably means I'm going to be sick. I can immediately reduce blood pressure by cutting my head off. That's not going to make me any healthier. And I've worked with a couple of banks where, you know, one of the directors came in and said, our goal for next year is 0 bugs. And what that tends to do is cut off the head, because all of a sudden people don't want to deliver anything anymore because 0 bugs. And the easiest way to get 0 bugs is never deliver anything. So story points and velocity in particular, people don't really understand. This is also a negative metric, because they tell us if the engine is working or not. If you look at car velocity, the fact that a car is going 0 kilometers an hour or 5 kilometers an hour is probably telling you something's wrong. The fact that the car is going 70 kilometers an hour doesn't tell you anything. It might be going in a completely wrong direction. But just by measuring velocity, we can't really measure success. And that's why I like the GPS analogy, because before GPS is all we had to do is measure the speed of the car and kind of visually see are we going in the right direction. And if we could spot that something is completely wrong, then we stop and replan. With GPS don't just tells us the speed of the car, it tells us how far we are from the destination. A GPS tells us what the next turn looks like and how far we are from the next turn, and helps us make that dynamically. So kind of, I think we need to start changing our thinking and moving away from declaring success when we deliver all the user stories, all the things in Jira, all the items in the MMF. We need to start thinking about success much more as kind of, is this making money? Is this saving money? Is this achieving what we wanted it to achieve from a business perspective? Not just have we delivered all the user stories we wanted to deliver, and are we delivering 70 story points per week? And in order to do that, I think we have to fundamentally change the way we plan. And kind of, this is a roadmap for a uniquely irrelevant product today called Fusion. That was one of the major web platforms 15 years ago. Now it's kind of like Nokia or something like that, where it's becoming increasingly irrelevant. And this is very common, this description of a roadmap. They call it kind of, you know, production releases, and it's a roadmap. It's very common to try and describe roadmaps like this. Lots of people do it with user stories, with use cases, with features like this. The problem with this is not actually a roadmap. This is a road. It's a sequence of things that happens, and you can't really turn left or right. So it's not even a road, it's a tunnel. And at the end of this tunnel, we emerge, and then we realize whether we've done something right or wrong. And that's kind of the problem with making all these decisions up front. Somebody's decided this is going to be the next 3 months of development or 6 months of development. Then we do that, and then we learn what's gone wrong. And people can say, okay, Agile has fixed this. We no longer do things like this. But even if you look at the standard description of Scrum, Scrum has this kind of product backlog magically going in. When all the decisions, all the important decisions are made, then you children can go and play your Scrums, whatever you want. And then kind of we have this potentially shippable product that's going to marinate for a while until it improves and becomes really shippable. So although this is, I'm not saying Scrum is a bad idea. The way most people understand this picture is very, very linear. That's why Forrester Research discovered kind of most people do what a Scrum fall. People understand this is a linear sequence where there's something here that spins, but then kind of again becomes linear later. And Jim Shore in 2005 wrote about a problem called story card hell, where people kind of made the decisions to deliver 500 user stories up front, put them in Jira or something like that, and then go off and tick them off one by one while doing whatever agile delivery. But the problem with this is by the time you've delivered story 128, something changes, and then we have to replan the other 300 stories. Then we have to throw away what we've already reanalyzed, or even worse, we go and deliver what we originally planned and completely miss the business goal. So I think we need to come up with much better ways of measuring success. Something that conceptually tells us that this user story succeeded or failed, not in terms of bugs, not in terms of story points delivered. Something that tells us, has this succeeded at all? From a much, much higher perspective. If we were able to do that, then we can actually plot that as the next turn on the GPS. That's what the next turn looks like. Have we made it or not? So that could help us start discovering this GPS thing. So the problem with roadmaps and kind of the cold fusion thing is definitely not a roadmap. A roadmap looks like this. A roadmap has multiple roads. And it's a map showing how these roads are connected. And then we can say, if we are here and we want to get there, well, these are some of the options that we can take. Because it's not important which roads we take, it's important that we get there. So I can start driving there. I can see that this bridge is blocked. Or in case of Serbia, it doesn't exist at all. And we can take another bridge and then try coming down. If this road is clear, we can step on the pedal and move really quickly. If it's congested, we can take some other option. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter because we'll get there. So the problem with the way we plan software is we plan software to go through all the roads. Or we plan software that's just a single kind of strip of road that doesn't give us any way to turn left or right. And I think in order to kind of come up with this flexible GPS that we need to plan, we also need to come up with a good map, a good destination, and then we can plot lots of turn-by-turn navigation options and decide which one was right for us. So kind of the another thing that's happening at the moment in a wider kind of business community is this thing called design thinking. Design thinking is an approach to running businesses that emerged from an interaction design agency called IDEO, a famous interaction design agency in the US. And about 15 years ago, they started applying their design process to their business and started making a lot more money, became world famous. And as a result of that and popularizing that, now there's a part of the Stanford Business School teaching this thing as kind of design thinking for business. One of the critical things that they say in design thinking is that people often, not just in software, in businesses in general, people do analysis on only one option. We create one roadmap, we create one plan, we create one set of MMFs, and then do analysis on that. And they say that's completely wrong because analysis is there to help you select options. If you only have one option, you've already selected it. And their design process is basically create lots of options and then apply analysis to choose between those options and choose the best possible option. And with software in particular these days, with the internet, with the speed, the way things are changing, this line here is actually feedback from production. This line here has to be feedback of how something did in actuality, not in terms of has it passed its tests and have we delivered 70 story points. So in order to kind of do this, we need to be able to define how we measure success. And I think that that's the critical missing piece here. And the critical missing piece is if we had a way to measure success, then we could actually come up with 5 options, measure them, decide which one is better. We could create this kind of GPS thing. We could define a destination and then a distance to destination, but this is a lot more difficult than it sounds. And kind of in order to do this, I think we need to go and look at what other industries have done. And there's a fantastic book by Robert Brinkerhoff who published this in 1991, where he was trying to understand why his organization was wasting millions of dollars on training programs that didn't bring the company any benefit. He was in charge of training for this large company in the US, and he had a budget of a couple of $1 million a year and spent that on things that people measured by, have we enjoyed this? Have we learned something new? There were some questionnaires, people tick the boxes, they would add up the numbers, they would declare success. And the problem with that is, he said, basically the fact that somebody enjoyed the training doesn't mean anything. If they hated the training but the company is better because of that, then we'll do it again. If they say they've not learned anything, but actually their work changes for a positive thing, that's good, that's a good training, we should do it again. But even if they said that, you know, they loved the training and they enjoyed it and they've learned lots of new things, but nobody changes the way they work, that's a horrible failure. And this was kind of the light bulb moment for me when I read this, and he started creating plans how to evaluate training based not on work, but on a change in the work. That's what he said is kind of lots of people make bad plans because they focus on work. For example, if you have Java developers, you send them to Java training. Or if you have testers, you send them to kind of agile testing training, without ever thinking, how do we want to change the way they work up front? So kind of the problem with this way of describing scope and this way of describing user stories is because it gives us this thing in order to monitor inventory. This is what we want to achieve from a business perspective. Now, the problem with that is the sales managers could probably monitor inventory before this story was done. They will be able to monitor inventory after this user story was done. So there is no way to objectively measure whether this user story actually did anything for them. The only thing we could measure is, do we have this report? And the fact that we have this report doesn't really mean anything. We've crossed 10 more kilometers. Was it in the right direction or not? So kind of Robert Brinkerhoff says that we should stop planning like this, and we should start refusing user stories like this. We should start refusing use cases that talk about this, and instead of asking for a change in this, how differently would somebody monitor the inventory after this user story is done? Is it going to be more accurate? Is it going to be faster? Is it going to be cheaper? As soon as we start talking about a change in somebody's work, because it's a change, it opens up a very interesting discussion on how we're going to measure this change, because a change should be observable. So I started refusing user stories that come as this and started asking for the change. And then once we have a change, we open up a very interesting discussion. Is this report really going to help you do this faster? Or if we have 50 reports planned, let's do one of them and measure, is that report helping us do it faster? Because if not, maybe we shouldn't do the other 50. So this is giving us on the GPS the next turn. Not really the destination, but the next turn. Because we can measure, have we made the next turn? This is telling us this is what we want to achieve short-term-ish. And we can see, have we achieved it or not? Are the people doing this faster or not? And I started kind of changing the template and giving people cards that look like this. Kind of forget about what you want in software, what kind of reports. Tell us who can kind of help or obstruct you achieve something. And by doing something faster or better or slower or worse or something like that. And that's what kind of Brinkerhoff says. Once we have this next thing we want to achieve, a change in the work, we need to decide, was this change in the work good for a company or not? Because the fact that somebody does something faster doesn't necessarily mean that the big picture is going to improve. So we need the big picture thing as well. And Brinkerhoff started creating schedules for training programs by visualizing these things. How does somebody's work change, and how does that contribute to the big picture? And what he realized is that you can prioritize these big picture things much, much easier than you can prioritize trainings. If you have 50 different options, do I send my testers on the Agile testing training course? Do I send my project managers on the Scrum Master training course, and lots of things like that? That's impossible to prioritize. Like it's impossible to prioritize, should we do this report or that report? Nobody can give us that as an answer. But the big picture thing is much, much easier to describe. Do we want to save money now, or do we want to deliver faster? Or what do we want to do as kind of a global picture? Then we can decide which of these cards actually contribute to that. So kind of that ties in with a very similar decision-making process that three psychologists called Gibb, Weisbord, and Drexler came up with in the United States during 1960s, where they were trying to solve a problem of non-government organizations having lots of money, having lots of people who want to do something, but hating to do planning. Because people there were enthusiasts, they didn't want to spend 6 months in planning. So everybody was driving in a different direction. They were pulling their non-government organizations in different directions and never really achieving any big impact. And what these guys said is basically we need to come up with a very quick way of planning so that everybody can align on what they want to achieve. And I think in terms of software, we are in the same position today, but for different reasons. Software companies have lots of money, have lots of people that work for them. It's not that we really hate planning. I do, but kind of that's not a global thing for the industry. But we no longer have time to plan. The world moves too quickly. We no longer have 6 months to sit down and just analyze and plan. We have to be able to plan very quickly. And what these guys said is kind of, yes, the big picture thinking is much easier to prioritize, and that's best, and things like that. But the problem with that is that people often come with solutions. People come with things they want to do. People come with things they want to have done. They don't come with this big picture thinking. And asking them for a bigger picture immediately is too difficult because nobody can answer that. If you take any of your user stories that you've done, or MMFs, or whatever you've done recently, use cases, and think about what's the proper business value in this. How much money is the company going to make from this? How much money is the company going to save on this? That question is, for a large majority of cases, incredibly difficult to answer. And what these guys have realized is that they need to ask some questions as steps towards that big question. And the questions that they started asking are kind of, why do we want to do anything? Why are we doing this? Who do we want to help? Who are our users? Who is our community? Translated to software, this is who are our customers, who are our stakeholders, who are the people who want to impact with this software. Then the next question they were asking is, well, what do these people want? What do they need? And then the last question they were asking is, how can we help them achieve that as an organization? They said, by asking these questions, as soon as you discover the answer to one of these questions, that kind of clarifies the questions next to it. And through a very quick visual kind of whiteboarding session where you go through the structured conversation up and down, up and down, up and down, in a few hours, people tend to then agree on one of these business goals, on a couple of these kind of impacts on people's work and behavior, and then we can come up with a nice plan. And what this also gives us is contextual success. If this is some kind of software scope, these are changes in the way people behave or work, and this is the big picture business goal, then the success of this thing is achieving that. The success of this thing is achieving that. And now we can start mapping out success on a much more conceptual level than just 0 bugs, or less than 10% bugs, or code coverage 70% or 70 story points. We can start actually visualizing what we mean by success and aligning everybody on that. So kind of we change this thing slightly because software is different from non-government organizations, because non-government organizations don't worry about spending too much money and things like that. And also, the question that these guys were asking is, what do these people want? All my clients ever wanted to become rich and go and live in the Caribbean. But that's not kind of deliverable for my project. So we started changing this question slightly. So on this level, we ask Brinkerhoff's question. How does their work change? How does their behavior change as a result of software? And then because we're asking how there, we flipped what to that and started asking, well, what can we achieve? What can we deliver through software to help cause this change in behavior? So kind of, here's a case study of this. I worked with this gaming company that does games for Facebook. And one day, the owner of the company came in and said, the next thing we want you to do are levels and achievements for all our games. And he brought a book of kind of wireframe diagrams, screenshots, and everything that the marketing department already decided on. They've already made all these decisions, and there's lots of epics and user stories and everything there. Just by looking at it, we said, okay, this is roughly 9 months of work. Now, this is a tunnel where we go in on one end, and 9 months later we come out, and then we decide whether we've done anything useful or not. The fact that we can deliver software every 2 weeks means that we don't have to spend 9 months in a tunnel. You know, the business can get better benefits out of this. So we went through this thinking process and said, this is a what? This is somebody's scope. So we said, okay, the next question on the list is, how does this change somebody's behavior? And he said, I don't understand. We said, well, imagine we do 9 months of this and we deliver all this. And nothing changes in the way our users behave. They don't use anything new. Nothing changes. Have we wasted time? I said, yeah. I said, okay, let's not do that. So give us an assumption. How do you imagine this thing actually impacting the user's behavior? And he said, okay, they're going to post to Facebook. I said, well, they post to Facebook now. So that's not really a change. What's a change? And he said, okay, they're going to post to Facebook a lot more frequently. I said, okay, so they're going to post a lot more. So we started kind of mapping this out, and then we said, okay, the criteria for success for this is actually people getting to post more. If we deliver 10% of this, people don't post more, that means we should stop. That means that road is blocked. If we deliver 10% of this and people post like crazy, that means we're doing something good. And kind of going back to what these guys said, this is just your next turn. It's not really the big picture thing. And we said, well, the next question they were asking is why? Why is this important? Why is it important for people to post more? And said, well, if they post more, other people might read about our games. I said, well, that's a behavior change. That's not a big picture thing. You're changing the behavior of non-players now. And we added that. And I said, okay, why is that important? Why is it important for other people to read about the games? He said, well, if they read about the games, they will come and play the games more. He said, okay, that's another behavior change. That's not a big picture thing yet. Why is that important? He said, well, that's a stupid question. And whenever you hear something like that, that means you're onto something good. I said, that's a stupid question because, you know, more players is more money. And we know that more we know how much a player is worth. I said, okay, so actually you want more players. He said, yeah. Well, how much more is more? Because if we spend 9 months doing this and we give you 5 more players, is that a waste of time and money? I said, no, we want 1 million players. And then we realized that kind of he had this number in his head all the time. They had a board meeting, and the investors asked the company to get 1 more million players next, and he came up with a solution. But he gave us a solution, he didn't give us a problem, and kind of going through this thinking process and asking these questions is just a structured conversation to unpack this thing. And now we had the destination on the map. This is the GPS destination. This is where we want to go. These are some of the roads we can take. And this is our next turn. And we said, well, let's not go through a tunnel here. Let's try and see if this is actually a good idea or not. So one thing we could do really, really quickly about this is tournament endings, because there's a, So one thing we could really do quickly about this is kind of tournament endings, because tournament endings are really not in this list at all, but it's kind of an achievement. And if we do that and people post about this, and that's 2 hours of work, then that means we're onto something good. And this is where we started creating options. That's where we started kind of going through this thinking process to now grow this the other way. And as design thinking says, create lots of options and then analyze them after you've measured whether they've succeeded or failed. And we started creating lots of other options on this map, like who else could help us achieve this? Because this is the destination. It doesn't matter if I go through some other road and achieve it, even better if it's faster, shorter, and cheaper. We started looking at some other options as well. So we said, okay, tournament winners, if they post about the games, that means we're onto something good. If we deliver this thing and nobody clicks on this button, that probably means this road is blocked. And that's what happened. We did tournament winners in about 2 hours. We put them live. In 3 days, nobody clicked on that button because people didn't want to spam their friends. And kind of winning some stupid tournament on a stupid Facebook game isn't enough for people to post. And we said, okay, this option here, this road is blocked. We need to go and look at some other alternatives. So what other behavior changes could we cause? And we said, well, you know, we could get people to invite their friends directly, more than they do it now. And the marketing department immediately came up with 30 pages of wireframe diagrams to automate invitations, what to offer. And they said, no, let's not do the same thing again. Why are you spending, you know, this much time coming up with all the designs? Let's just try and kind of move through the map, and the GPS is going to recalculate it for us. Don't worry about it. And we said, okay, automated invitations, that's one of your options, but that's a couple of weeks of work. How do we prove that this road makes sense? And we said, well, we could do something semi-automated. We could do something manual. For example, I can put a button to invite friends on the website and just dump all their friends' emails in a text file. And it's not going to scale. We're not going to be able to invite 5 million people like this, but I can at least prove that this bridge is there. And this is what we did. We put a button there. People clicked on the button. we stayed overnight and we sent 200 emails, and we proved that this road is okay. But we also proved that this road is not okay, because although the invitations were going out, people were not coming. So we changed somebody's behavior, but that didn't really contribute to the bigger picture, which means we've taken the next turn, but the turn was wrong. And then we went to the marketing department and said, look, this doesn't work, we need something else. And they said, no, this has to be, this is the best idea in the world. I said, okay, but you do not have to be 100% right. Nobody's asking you to do that. Give us an assumption why you think this failed. Because we can add more options there. Like give us an assumption that we can work on. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be 7 months of work. Give me something to test as a business assumption. And I said, well, if you look at the email template we were sending out, the link to join the game was part of the text, and it wasn't really bold or anything, so people maybe have not seen the link. I said, okay, let's make a big button that says, join the game. And then we changed the marketing template. And we kept the fake button there for a couple of more days. We sent a couple of hundred emails out. People started coming. Now we've proven that this road is okay. We've proven that people will invite their friends. We've proven that when they invite their friends, other players come. And we are moving this figure so that it makes sense. So we have kind of a business success thing with that scope, with those user stories. It wasn't really measured as 70 story points or 50 tests or code coverage 35%. All those things are important. They tell us that the engine is working. If the engine isn't working, everything else doesn't matter. But once the engine is working, we should measure something else. And we started getting a lot more players through this, and we said, okay, let's now really change this behavior. This is a motorway. We can add lots of things to this now and drive lots of things through that. And we started doing incentives. We started doing lots of other options for people to invite their friends. In a couple of weeks, we had this thing. And we said, stop. What you wanted to achieve is this. We have achieved this. We are not going to spend 7 months doing this stuff upstairs on the top because we no longer need it. And we were able to replan, we were able to kind of readjust, and we were able to get this done for us automatically by a GPS. Because by going through all those questions, we could actually plot a map. This is a map of roads. And we could use this map to define success on a much higher conceptual level and measure whether we're actually doing this right or not. And kind of one thing that I've realized that's really crucial for this is that all the connections on this map are actually assumptions. All software scope is based on assumptions. Somebody somewhere thought something is a good idea because of something, but we never get that information. We just get the request, do this, because I want it. And kind of, if we start looking at the connections on this map as assumptions, then we can start thinking about, well, how would I test those assumptions? What's the fastest, the cheapest way for me to test, to prove that this assumption is right? And we can start moving through this map like an unknown territory and discovering parts of it as we go along. And then once we've seen the destination, once we've seen where we want to go, we can actually go there very, very quickly. So we can be cautious at the start and kind of bold later. And I think kind of visualizing scope like this worked incredibly well for lots of different situations with my clients. I've done it with small web startups. I've done it with a big bank in Denmark where we've reversed engineered the scope, and kind of that resulted in maybe 10% of what they wanted to. The scope of, they had a scope of about, I don't know, 1.5 years of rewrite of their entire system. And well, you know, it's not for me to judge, but once we kind of reversed engineered and mapped it into something like this, they realized that actually most of it doesn't really contribute to this thing here. And then kind of they replaced a 1.5 year project with something that's much simpler, much easier, much faster to deliver, because they were able to agree on this. So kind of the nice things about this is it visualizes assumptions. I don't know of any other software requirements or specification or scoping technique that visualizes assumptions. So kind of that's the key benefit of this, and because it's visual, it allows different people to actually agree on this very quickly. That's what Gibb, Weisbord, and Drexler said. If you go and ask these questions on a whiteboard with the right people in the room, in a couple of hours you will get this big picture. it will emerge. Instead of just kind of writing long documents and planning for months and doing analysis before we even start delivering. So kind of, here's a couple of books I've mentioned. One is Robert Brinkerhoff's book on systems thinking in human resource development. This is where he talks about changes in somebody's behavior or changes in somebody's business as a way to measure success. And there he describes kind of mapping these things to high-level goals. This is a book from a Swedish interaction design agency who used this visualization with Swedish government projects to help them limit scope creep and prevent projects from going over time and over budget. It's an incredibly interesting book to read, but it's one reviewer posted, I think, on Amazon that this is the longest 100-page book you'll ever read, because the English translation looks like it was done by Google Translate. The third book that I've mentioned, I've not really mentioned, but I've used ideas from this book, is Doug Hubbard's book on how to measure anything. Although the title kind of sounds like a stupid American self-help book, it's actually quite an interesting book on business metrics and value of information, what to measure, what not to measure. One of the critical ideas he has there is that people measure what's easy to measure, not what's important. And that's kind of, you know, the story points thing, bugs and things that they're very, very easy to measure. That's why we like measuring them. But we don't then tend to measure what's really important. And kind of the visualization I've showed you and lots of other examples you can find on impactmapping.org. The map I've showed you is called an impact map because it visualizes impacts on people's behavior. This is my book. About 80% of the book is actually available on the website. So you can read most of it on the website. That's about it. I hope I've kind of challenged your thinking at least a bit. And there's my challenge for you for next year. Try to not deliver the whole scope. Try to deliver the least amount of scope possible to actually go to the destination. And try to define what the destination is. Because just by doing that, you create an incredible level of alignment between everybody, and you'll see how kind of magically 90% of the project just disappears. Okay. Hvala. We have about 10 minutes for questions if you want.
An observation. Very large organization is perfect.
Good software is difficult. Good software is not easy.
This is not the problem of software. It's a problem of general behavior.
Well, in large organizations, everything is difficult.
If you go to a meeting and then we will not deliver 100%, next meeting we will come with Kalashnikov.
But then what is 100%? If you go back to this, is 100% delivering this thing or delivering this thing? And you can say we deliver 100%.
We come of that, and they claim that they are responsible of that. Marketing will say, we have decided. You know very well this story. We have decided, let's do this.
That's good. Again, good software is difficult. Good software is not easy. I've worked with some of the biggest banks in the world on doing this, and they've done it very successfully. So it's perfectly possible. A business.
A business, okay. Not with IT.
Well, IT, I kind of, you know, something like this has to be done by IT and business together.
Always.
So if you just do IT, they'll do this.
Okay. Another minor thing. When you say that level and achievement, you say, I do 10%. If works, I go on. Otherwise, I stop. I think this is very dangerous because it's not true that can happen. That 10% is going very bad. 20% and then 60% explode.
Okay, but then, you know, that's an assumption. That means that, you know, with the 10% we've chosen to do first. Well, generally with software, you never know without doing anyway. So this is a way to try out, and we can say, what's nice about this is levels and achievements is not the objective. This is the objective. If we do 10% of levels and achievements, we don't achieve anything. Maybe we spend another 10%, but that means this is too difficult. This road is very slow.
If you do 55,
No. But then the question is, can we do something else cheaper than doing that? And that's really, you know, that if this road is very slow, Should we keep going on that road, or should we take some other road? And you know, that's a decision that everybody has to make together. So sometimes, yes, sometimes you do 70% and it takes off, but then, you know, the question is, should you have done something faster?
Yeah, of course.
One comment and one question.
Okay.
One comment, if you said that this is the only way of visualizing this thing, I would add that Lean Startup and Business Canvas is another one which achieve the first.
I think Lean Canvas works on a very high level perspective. And lots of people use Lean Canvas as an input into this.
You can use it on pretty low level. I've seen.
Okay. Then that's another way of doing that.
Just throwing in an idea. And a question, because I like the story, and for me it seems pretty kind of easily applicable when the whole product stream, the whole business stream is within one organization. Now, the dynamics of that is very different when you have a client and a vendor, and this border comes, you know, between one org and the other org.
Yep.
And the question is, do you have an advice how to close this gap?
So there's a great video. There's a great video on the Skills Matter website by a company called. There was a talk from a company called Loyalty Management. These guys do loyalty programs in the UK. They do work with very, very large companies like British Gas, and they've done this with their clients. They brought the clients in. Another thing that design thinking talks about is co-design, co-development, where kind of if you have a client-supply relationship, you should involve the client in the design. Not low-level technical design, kind of problem-solving solution design. They've done this with their clients, and their clients loved it so much that kind of they started inviting the software people to come and run these workshops for other parts of their business that are not just software-related. So it's on the Skills Matter website. If you Google for impact mapping, you'll find it. So I think involving the clients is, if possible, very, very good.
It's necessary to make it happen. The question is how.
That's a very contextual question. That depends on you know, a particular situation. But the guys at Loyalty Management had some good ideas there. So I think, you know, that's probably kind of a 10-day talk. So there's a difference between measurement and quantification as well. So Tom Gilb talks about difference in measurement and quantification. So where he says just by quantifying something, you very often kind of clarify what you want to do. So there's a couple of models like Cooper. Cooper is QUP. Cooper is a really good model for kind of coming up with good measurements of scalable things that are not kind of on and off. And it talks about intervals that you derive from the market perspective. So it talks about utility, differentiation, and saturation points that are determined by the market, not by you. So for example, if you're talking about, I don't know, network device adoption, the market tells us what makes a successful or irrelevant device. And then you can kind of quantify it like that. It might be not cheap to measure, but you can quantify. The other thing is, and this is where Doug Hubbard's book is really good. He talks about the value of information, because people often kind of say, oh, this is very, very expensive to measure. We're not going to do that. And he talks about the value of a piece of information, and he says that a piece of information, like a measurement, is valuable proportional to the decision it informs. So if you want to inform a decision, should we invest 10 million euros in something, then maybe spending 100,000 euros on measuring that is not such a big problem when you position it in that perspective. And then all of a sudden, you have a budget for measurements. So some things I've done is, for example, where we decided the decision is important enough so that I could actually get the chief technical architect full time. And I said, okay, I'm going to put him on support, because I have him for full time, and because he's on support, the client is going to let me play with the system in production. And then we measure things, but they agreed that they will do that. So I think lots of people just kind of move away from measuring anything that's costly to measure, and without even thinking how important is this metric. So, and also as Tom Gilb says that very often just by quantifying things, you don't really have to measure them, but by expressing what you expect, you eliminate lots of ideas that wouldn't contribute to that.
Do you have experience with current agencies where things are more linear, you know?
I don't tend to work where software is not important. The Swedish guys, kind of their case studies about kind of Swedish government projects. So maybe that's an interesting thing to read, but I kind of... There is no why there. Okay, hvala puno.